In Section 4, Police Violence Specific to Minority Populations, we will discuss African American men as the target, police violence as reported by women, violence against African American women, perception of guilt contributing to increased police presence, and last but not least, economic and financial strain for communities of color. This quote by Michelle Alexander states, "Law enforcement officials often point to racial composition of our prisons and jails as justification for targeting racial minorities. But the empirical evidence actually suggested the opposite conclusion was warranted. The disproportionate imprisonment of people of color was, in part, a product of racial profiling, not a justification for it." Michelle Alexander. And might I add, please be sure to read her book, The New Jim Crow, which highlights many of the things that we'll be talking about throughout this presentation. Black Lives Matter. What are your thoughts when you see that sign? Is there a reason to put forth this notion that Black Lives Matter more so than anyone else, or is it something that we're saying or has been said to elevate the cause of Black lives seemingly not mattering? Police brutality against Black men. According to research, police officers view Black males as potential perpetrators and could lead to acts of brutality. In their research, the authors suggest that since Black people in general, and Black males in particular, are caricatured as aggressive and criminal, police are more likely to view Black men as a threat, which justifies the disproportionate use of deadly force. Therefore, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that police officers' decisions to act aggressively may, to some extent, be influenced by race. Viewing the Black male as the predator. And for this section, I need not do anything but show this picture. What are your thoughts when you see a Black male? Do you see him as someone, as a family man, as a loving contributor to his community, or do you see him as a predator? And as we go further on into this section, we'll talk about how public perception can lead to Black men being more often than not engaged by police in a way that is not necessarily according to police protocol. Police violence against women. In a recent study, researchers administered a survey of police public encounters. The instrument was police practice inventory between March and April of 2016 in 4 U.S. cities. And there was a number of outcomes in this particular study, but one that I want to key in on today was that increasing evidence suggests that women reported intimate partner violence who reported intimate partner violence and sexual violence to police are often met with harmful or neglectful police responses, and thus women's exposure to police violence may be associated with experiences of partner violence, interpersonal violence, and sexual violence. In other words, as a result of a woman going to the police or as a result of some kind of violence against her, she is met with hostility, she is met with questions about whether these accusations were accurate, and in some cases further providing more trauma as opposed to helping her. Invisible No More. In her book, Andrea Ritchie wrote, "Sexual violence against Black women has been part of a long history since 1492. So in this book, she basically states that Black women throughout the decades, throughout centuries, has been a part of a cumulative and increasing acts of violence against those that were in power. She goes on to say police officers' response to violence in communities is part of a overwhelming web that has been going on for centuries. I would add that you check that book out. It is also in the reference section of this particular section. And we have Jajeria Becton, and I wanted to put this particular instance up because Jajeria Becton is a young girl that was essentially grabbed and violently assaulted by an officer while she was at a pool. And this made national headlines. And people, they want to know, why was this necessary? Why did this excessive use of force, why did this also feel necessary to use this force? And to this day, we still have not found that out. But in this particular video, please check it out. In the reference section, you will find her take on it and how she feels and how she was traumatized by this this act of this officer. Perception of guilt contributing to increased police presence. For this section, for this part, I want to preface this. And what I want to say is that not everyone may view or views African American males or African American individuals as predators, as violent. But there are many others that do. And in these clips that please feel free to check out, I want you to take a look at that. And what are your thoughts on this? The first, let's look at this statement. It says, add blank to the list of things you cannot do while black. What am I talking about when I say add blank to the list of things you cannot do while black? Let's go to the first one. Let's add babysitting 2 white kids. In this video, a black male, police was called on a black male for babysitting 2 white kids. Just recently made the news. Another is Permit Patty. Did call police on girls for selling water. So add not being able to sell water as a list of things you cannot do while black. Let's add renting an Airbnb in a neighborhood that is not predominantly black as things that you cannot do while black. Let's add falling asleep as a student in the library as some things that you cannot do while black. And let's add being a little boy who accidentally brushes up against a woman in a store. His book bag actually hits across her as some of the things that you cannot do while black. And last but not least, the woman at the center of the Emmett Till finally revealed that she had in fact lied. And I put that up there because the previous one, this young little boy who, had it not been for video evidence, we might still believe that he groped this woman. And the same occurs for Emmett Till in the Emmett Till case, which was an outrage at the time of the civil rights movement and sparked tremendous protests. And I think what I want to do in this particular section is ask everyone who's watching this, what are you doing to contribute to the stigma of vilifying people of color, men of color, which causes an increased level of police violence? Because there's economic and financial strain as a result of it. Police brutality affects individual and community health through its toll on productivity on the economy. In addition to job loss after incarceration, survivors of brutality may have to deal with disabilities resulting from the use of excessive force. And last but not least, black communities, because loved ones has been taken away from them, have been taking a toll on grievance days, plans for funeral, organized protests. All these things have taken a toll on the stress and the health and well-being of communities of color. And I want to end it here. Let's tune into the next section where we'll talk about this topic a little further. Thank you.